Yo, 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 it is I, your proverbial boy, Jeffy. I'm about to head out to Canada tomorrow. I'm going to Toronto, Ontario for a free event. That's November 21st, this Thursday at 7 p.m. If you ever wanted to see me, touch me, ask me a question, now's your opportunity to do so. 2 weeks from now, I'll also be in Vancouver, British Columbia on December 5th for another free event that Thursday at 7 p.m. Click the links in the description to check that out. So today, I wanted to share some brand new ideas that I've been working on for a little over a year that I've never really presented before, at least not on this channel. Now, I think it's fair to say that the process of meeting and becoming intimate with somebody that you just met, that's something that's been explored in excruciating detail in our material, right? Over the last 17 years, we pretty much figured out technique. Like if you want to learn the nuts and bolts techniques of that kind of interaction, there exists a very, very large back catalog of material that can explain and elucidate those techniques to you. And I am a walking encyclopedia of that knowledge. But like I said, I felt kind of like the well had run dry in terms of new understandings in that area and new understandings in the area of nuts and bolts techniques. So I wanted to explore things even further. And that's why about 2 years ago, I began this process of research that led to the development of my new upcoming program, Charisma Mastery. So as all my colleagues and I, Julian, Owen, Max, etc., as we began to expand our focus more recently to encompass more broad self-development concepts, one thing that I was absolutely freaking adamant about to Owen was that I wasn't just going to put out some generic BS, right? Like say what you want about me, but I keep it real. I didn't want to just come out of left field with some watered down PC Tony Robbins garbage, like rip off of Tony Robbins. Like here's my new self-development program, right? Like here you go. It's like just this random, again, watered down self-help. No, it was absolutely imperative to me and absolutely non-negotiable as far as I was concerned that whatever I came out with in this kind of new realm, it had to be a natural extension of and a natural outgrowth of my previous work, right? Not just some like disjointed standalone thing that just came out of left field. And so I really puzzled over this for quite some time, because again, that was non-negotiable to me. It had to make sense coming from Jeff that this was my next step, right? So finally though, through my research, things kind of finally started to coalesce and the vision for Charisma Mastery actually began to take form in my mind. And the seed that kind of started it all was very simple. There was one area that I felt I was kind of lacking in my ability to articulate to clients. And that area was verbal witticisms. It's something that I've been known for. Like, oh, Jeffy's got the verbal skills, et cetera, et cetera. So when students would ask me, they'd say, well, how do I improve my verbal skills? I had kind of a boilerplate response to that. And I would say, well, there's basically two sides to the witticisms coin, so to speak, right? The first is invisible threads, and the second is letting go. So if you're unfamiliar with invisible threads, I'll briefly explain what those are here. Basically, it's this idea that in a given interaction, the people you're interacting with, they could say anything. There's an infinite range of things they could say, right? However, within that infinity, there's a finite range of things that they usually do. So as you get a lot of experience interacting with people, you tend to hear the things that they commonly say in specific types of interactions, and you develop retorts for them or responses for them, what Voltaire called like the staircase wit. And so the next time you hear those threads, you'll have like a really good response to it, right? Like if I say this, they could say anything, but they'll usually say this, or this. And out of those 5 things, I have developed over the years several retorts for every single one of them, each imparting a different emotional tenor to the interaction, depending on which direction I wanted to take it, right? So that's invisible threads. How do you get invisible threads? Gain experience. So the other flip side, the flip side of that coin was letting go of needing it to be good. And in our live events, one of the exercises that we very often do is we have people clear their minds and just allow whatever bubbles up to come out. They just say whatever bubbles up. Like if I'm to do it right now, I would do pineapple, Tanzania, platypus, iridescent, sea anemone, abalone, ligature, eradicate, echidna, tangential, liposome, paraplegic. Again, like as words just come up, I don't judge, I just simply let them go. Now, interestingly enough, when we do that exercise, a lot of the time it comes to a person and they can't even do it. They're completely paralyzed. They're like, oh, pig, bacon, tacos, and they're just completely flabbergasted because there's too much internal judgment of what they're about to say. Like, what if I say something embarrassing? What if I say something that makes me look stupid or reveal something embarrassing about how my psyche works? So people had a lot of difficulty letting go. So, okay, great explanation, but that explanation, like people would ask me, how do I get better at verbal witticisms? And that's what I tell them, right? But I don't think it was satisfactory. Because you're like, okay, invisible threads. How can I learn the invisible threads? Oh, you get experience. How do I learn to let go? You just let go, right? So I felt I was a great practitioner. I felt I was a great practitioner of verbal witticisms, but I was not the best teacher at it. At least not the best that I could be, and that really bothered me. So for my next program, I wanted to explore those components of verbal expression, of wit, and charisma down to the molecular level. So I would have a better explanation and then also develop a process to actually exercise it. And as I began to explore, I dug down very deeply into a wide variety of sources, from cognitive behavioral therapy to obscure acting methods to peak athletics performance training to hard neuroscience to transcendental approaches and more. Basically, it's like books on books on books on books on books. I just, I kind of went into a research hole and I just buy books and I'd read books and they'd reference other books and the books kept piling up until I was able to dig out from behind them. And as I drew material from all of these sources, again, through the prism of my 17 years as a social skills coach, and again, I'd put it through, I'd view all of these materials as I read them through that prism, and where can I apply it to my clients? And so as I dug into all this research, the program slowly began to come into focus, right? And it all made sense. It's like, okay, this makes sense for me to do. And what I stumbled upon was what I really believe is going to be the next level of teaching this stuff. And one thing I've seen time and time again, pretty much every single weekend at my live programs, is that people have an inability to execute, even if they know the material, quote unquote, like the back of their hand. Like something is blocking them. They're paralyzed. I'm like, go do this. And they are paralyzed. And the thing is, they know it. They know they're paralyzed. They know what to do. They know they're supposed to be doing it. They hear me telling them to do it, and they know they should be doing it, but they can't. It's like being awake for surgery under anesthesia. You can see this horrible thing happening to you, but you can't do anything about it. And then this just brings up shame, it brings up guilt, and it just intensifies the judgmental burden that just perpetuates the cycle and keeps them locked and unable to take action in the moment. And mind you, these are smart people, right? They know what to do, but they keep doing the same thing regardless, which is nothing, right? Or they do take action, but there are several tensions that are preventing them from expressing themselves freely, so it doesn't seem attractive, it doesn't seem charismatic, it's just repulsive to other people, okay? You can know all the techniques in the world, but if you can't remove these blocks, it will not matter. So again, identifying and removing those inner blocks is the next level of teaching this stuff. And on that note, I wanted to create something that was absolutely unprecedented in this area as it relates specifically to social interaction. So the fundamental purpose of this program is to cultivate, open, and sustain charismatic expression with increasing consistency. And that fundamental purpose is then supported by a primary purpose, which is to allow you to fulfill your expressive potential and furthermore, create the conditions in which charismatic expression and so-called flow state and peak performance state can occur. So from there, we then have a secondary purpose that emerges, which was to create an exercise process for the so-called total instrument of your body and your mind and your inner emotional process and your intuition that serves as a vehicle for the realization of that expressive potential. So to achieve these purposes, I really wanted to, examine a variety of ideas like emotional vibe, reliable vocal projection, creative imagination, control of the body's non-vocal means of communication. And all of these skills I knew had to be fully integrated into a technique that's free from tensions and free from inhibition. Now, in the early days of our teachings, we took a kind of simplified outside-in approach, if you will. In other words, we had certain tactics or routines that we offered that worked for other people in the past. And that's great, but the problem with that is it really didn't offer a lot of comfort to the person that was attempting to develop and integrate their own abilities, right? And to assemble a very distinctive approach that was based on their own personality. So this whole idea of charisma, the ability to project energy can be thought of as charisma. And we might define that in unorthodox terms, as a powerful output of high intensity physical or psychic energy, right? So charisma, and I saw a couple comments on the trailer to this, and they're just, charisma is an innate God-given thing, right? It's usually thought of as something that either you have or you don't. However, if we define it as energy flow, we can exercise those energies and we can increase the flow. But we first have to make sure that there's nothing impeding that flow in the first place, right? So remove the interference and the charisma, quote unquote, will increase. Once we do that, we isolate the elements that contribute to that energy flow, and then we're gonna exercise them separately before recombining them, okay? So remove the interference, identify the skills, exercise them separately, and then put them back together in a more completely realized whole. Now, when we're talking about this, issues of style, issues of self and identity also come into play here. Everybody's different, and it's tough to know whether someone's going to actually have the dedication necessary to develop charismatic projective power, right? It's very difficult to remove habits and calcified behavior patterns, calcified mannerisms, especially as you get older. Like, these habits tend to assert themselves, and old patterns have a tendency to reemerge. But by the same token, if you want to be more than yourself, it's necessary to first be firmly grounded in yourself, right? Like, you can't soar without a firm base from which to launch, but if you never leave the base, you're not going to either. Now, to think about this, it's interesting because we're born with little or no conventions or agreements about our behavior or our lifestyle, right? So how do we learn that? Well, we learn by observing people. We learn by imitating them. We learn through correction. We learn through practice. And eventually, it's sort of this blending that takes place of our disposition with the environment and other people's dispositions, and we arrive finally at kind of a personal way of life, like our personality. And you do the exact same thing when you're attempting to alter your style of communicating, right? So it's like wearing in new shoes. It's going to be painful at first, right? We learn a new style of communication via interaction between our current personality and the altered demands of the outside world presented by the types of interactions and outcomes you want to have, whether that's sales, whether that's intimate encounters, what have you. It doesn't matter. There's no difference. Now, interestingly enough, think about this. There's a parallel between the original learned naturalness, quote unquote, of your developed personality and the process of learning and making natural a new way of communicating. So you want to try on these strange ways of being, so to speak. However, it's very important that you think of this whole process as play, not work, right? Our work is our play, is our work, is our play, and so on. And of course, that's sort of like one set of opposites that have to be integrated. There's many, many opposites that have to be integrated when we're talking about just social interaction, social skills, social intelligence in general. And I had a student once, not long ago, who was like, Jeff, I see you when you interact with these people on the program. You're very ebullient. You're very confident. Were you always like this? And I was like, no, I wasn't always like this. I had to work for this. And then, because the student was like, I see that, and I just feel like it's not me, right? It's not me. So how can I achieve this changed personality? Well, there's a couple ways you could go about that. Okay, so let's explore a couple. Option one, you could just trust your own natural personality to guide you, right? If things don't feel true, if it doesn't feel natural for you to do, I just won't do it. It's not a very good way of doing things, because again, if your natural way of doing things worked, it would have worked by now, right? So that's option one. Option two, I'll go to some coach and I'll just do whatever the coach tells me to do. Okay, it's a little bit better. It's at least it's open-minded. But now, an issue with that is developing something that we call authority dependence. I'm trying to walk a fine line between coaching and guiding, providing guidance and feedback, and making myself into this authority upon which they're dependent. Because if that happens, what's going to happen after the program ends? Right? They're going to be cast adrift, completely lost. So that's not the greatest either. Okay, option three, I'll just practice whatever I have to do, knowing that it won't feel normal at first, and hope it will eventually feel natural. Okay, that's a pretty good way to go about it. I mean, that's now we're getting warmer. Or option four, and this is what I did when I first started out. I will imagine how I would act if I were this character. So I had in my mind this character who was a master of the types of communication, the types of interactions that I wanted to have. This like suave dude who could just roll in, tear shit up, completely own the situation, be confident, cocky, cool, etc., suave, etc. So I thought to myself, how would I act? And again, I called him Jeffy. So I was like, how would I act if I were that guy, right? And then I would compare it to how that character would actually act. And once you know the difference, you can translate your reasons for acting the way you do into the character's actions. How would they act physically, emotionally? How would they act vocally? Understand that all ways of being, including your current one, are stylized, right? Again, what you think of as your personality is just selections of patterns that are no more natural than any other. And it's the same when you're trying to develop, again, a new way of communicating. So you want to exercise with many different styles until the human energies that feed into those styles are no longer inhibited by the shape of the vessel into which they flow, so to speak. Right? This is why in the program we use a lot of improvisation and things like that, because those kind of exercises promote expanded style capabilities by encouraging the use of personal energies within a more formalized style, right? Thus making all formalized styles more accessible to your personal energy. Now, these are just a couple very, very introductory concepts for the Charisma Mastery program. In the full program, which is an absolute beast, I go hard. When I release something, I basically kill myself for a couple years, and so in this full program, I go extremely deep, and I explore in microcosmic detail the functioning of the human energy system and all of its component parts. Okay, we're talking about the outer projective modes, like the voice, the face, the body language, to the inner guidance modes of the intellect, the inner emotional process, intuition, higher observer, and how all of these parts interrelate and affect each other in real time as you socially interact as a unit, as a person. So knowing how your system functions, that's the first step, right? To identifying these various tensions, these various entanglements that prevent you from taking action or prevent you from being as free and effective as you could be as you communicate. So from there, the program then outlines a very methodical exercise practice that's designed to isolate these entanglements, release them, and then again, put everything back together in a more completely realized whole. And the end result, it's freedom from judgmental inhibition, freedom from resistance in social interactions, that avoidant anxiety, okay, that prevents you from expressing yourself freely, and again, a very noticeably improved ability to communicate expressively with the qualities of intensity and just command. So The program drops February 17th, 2020, but you can go to charismamastery.com right now to sign up for that VIP interest list. And if you do that, you're going to be notified of some cool stuff that I'm going to be rolling out before the official launch. So do that right now. Anyway, Jeffy here, and I'll see you next week with some more insights into this program.
Definitely learned a lot just to be able to connect with people a lot better. Jeffy's really studied down to the roots of how we're so stifled and you have these entanglements inside you and how to release them. I definitely recommend this program for other people to take a deeper look within themselves. Jeffy's program is amazing.
This program is extremely exercise-based. It's designed to give you a process to identify these weaknesses in your communicative system, to open and sustain charismatic expression, charismatic communication with increasing consistency. All sensory communication is based on some relationship of these three perceptual and projective modes. Any art involving human communication is going to benefit from knowing how the communicating power of each mode can be enhanced. Charisma and conversational skill really hasn't had a vocabulary for talking about these issues surrounding the technique. Most of the books you read, the vast majority of them are very surface level, very hokey. And even with experienced teachers, the feedback can often be very subjective and vague. You seem kind of stifled. So I want to change the way that these criticisms or descriptions are verbalized and get very, very specific. So when we're talking about these blockages, we know precisely what we're talking about here.
If you follow the instructions, you see something very net and precise that happens. You're going to see the result instantaneous.
The best charisma program I've ever seen.
So I learned something which is very rare.
How do people use their energies when they communicate? How can I help them become masters of those energies? So when you go out and you feel that blockage, that inability to act, oh, there's the person I want to talk to. I know how to go talk to them. I've read the theories, I've watched all the videos, but I can't take action. What's impeding the flow? Remove the obstacles, isolate the skills, exercise them separately, then put them together, back together in a more completely realized whole.
Unleashes your true charisma.
And in fact, you have some glimpse of energy you can manage on the wall side. Increase it, decrease it, manage it. Seriously, it was absolutely amazing and astonishing.
How to speak to all the issues surrounding this interrelationship between intuitive and intellectual resources is arguably the most fundamental challenge facing anyone who's attempting to improve their communication skills. So this program intends to prepare your total instrument to open and communicate freely, but also teach you to let go.
He will take you by the hand and guide you step by step with his method that he's been trying and improving, and you're gonna get the results that you wanna be looking for.
Overall, this was a really broad spectrum course in charisma. I think I can apply it in my dating life, also in business and other areas of my life. So if you're looking to develop general charisma that you can apply across all areas of life, definitely check out Jeff's Charisma Mastery.